Hi, I'm Joe, and this is Joe's Magical Adventures. I still haven't come up with a new name, so this is what we're going with still.
Alright.
This is me replacing a hot water cylinder element. I've already been here a few days earlier. In big New Year's, my supplier wasn't open, so I wasn't able to get a new element until the day that I am here doing this. So here I am, replacing this element. I'm just getting straight into it, ripping the cover off, the element cover there. Yeah, I threw everything that I thought I'd need into a crate and dragged that up into the ceiling with me. Right, so I've just grabbed my multimeter so I can prove the supply's dead before I go unscrewing any connections. I've just flipped it on just to prove that my meter's working. I've got 224 volts there, and then I've just flipped it off again and just making sure that isolator's working, which it did. The thermostat has a little clip-on cover which covers all the connections, so I'm just getting rid of that. Now the first thing I do when I go and replace an element is, before draining the cylinder off, I'll obviously disconnect all the wiring because you can't get the spanner on, but I'll crack the nut first. That just reduces the chance of you damaging the copper cylinder. So while it's full of water, you're not going to twist anything. And then I'll just nip it back up again so it's not leaking. There was a ball valve installed directly on the cylinder there, so I'm just turning that off. That's the cold supply in to the cylinder. But yeah, this probably hasn't been operated in the 15 years that this cylinder's been up in this ceiling space. So it was a bit of a struggle to get it to turn, and now that I've turned it, it's actually started weeping. But that's kind of the nature of rubber seals like that. So now I'm just looking at the plumbing, seeing how I'm going to drain this off, because there was no provision for a drain or anything like that. So yeah, I'm just looking at this fitting here, and that's the one that I'm going to take off. So I've just decided that I need to go and kill the cold supply to the house. I've just climbed down and done that. Here's me coming back. Cool, so I'm just taking that off. So that's that is the cold water from the rest of the house supplying the cylinder. So a little bit of a leak there. Put my thumb over it. Now I bought various fittings with me because I knew, obviously I came a couple of days ago and had a wee look. I didn't look too hard, but I knew I'd probably be taking one of these off to drain it. So I had a swivel in a box at home. I grabbed that. It's an old cut-off fitting. I couldn't find any joiners of any kind. but I did find this old ducts fitting at the bottom of a box, so I'm just gonna crimp that on there. I didn't realise, but it was actually a bit crushed, so the compression rings on the fitting were misshapen. They weren't circular anymore, so here's me struggling to get the hose in, but I ended up crushing it back to somewhat normal, and ended up getting a bit of garden hose in there. And there's me polybutylene crimpers, 15mm crimpers, just crimping them on there. Right, so I'm just going to quickly turn on the water. I'll turn on that ball valve again and just make sure we get some water coming out of that hose. It was a real struggle, like it was well seized up, this ball valve. Yeah, so I've got water flowing there now. This cylinder's installed on a drain pan, so there is a pan there that it's sitting in, and it's got a waste pipe which drains off outside. So I could technically just drain it off into that, but I would really prefer to not leak water all through someone's ceiling. So I'm pushing the garden hose down the waste pipe all the way to the end. Just making sure that's secure, and the ball valve's all the way on. Right, just going to climb down and go check. I'm not going to sit up in the ceiling for 15 minutes while this drains off. So I'd rather just go stand and watch a hose. But there it is, sticking out of the feet there.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
It's yep, there it is, just starting to dribble. It's the very last bits of the water in the hose. So jump back up in the ceiling. Let's go a different way actually. See if it's easier. It's definitely not easier, but anyway, here we are. So now that's drained off, I can pull the old element out. Just grab the socket again. It's the cylinder's obviously moved a bit now that there's less water in there, and it's tight again. So if I hadn't cracked the nut before, this would have been quite hard. So, and there's definitely a chance of damaging the socket in the cylinder. So thought I'd cut myself on the sheet metal. Now, there's a bit of water leaking out there. It's a bit unfortunate that the element socket is at the exact same height as the cold inlet. But anyway, there's that element. You can see how corroded that is. And here's the new one. So these are 3 kilowatt elements, which is pretty standard for a cylinder of this size now. They used to be 2,400 watts. But kind of shifted away from that to 3 kilowatt elements. And it's me just grabbing the grabbing the fiber washer out and putting that on, and in it goes. Just tighten that up. Now, I probably did put a bit too much tension on this for an empty cylinder. I'd normally just get it up tight enough to not leak, get some water in it, and then crank it up, but I was kind of, I don't know, I wasn't necessarily rushing, but I was still moving. Now, the terminals on these elements, I've had some issues in the past, so you got to be real gentle with them. I've got a bit of a story where I installed a new cylinder and wired it up, and it wasn't heating after I livened it up. I was a bit confused. Ended up taking the cover back off and having a look, and one of the screw terminals, they're just like spot welded on. The spot welds had actually broke, so it needed a new element, and I jumped into draining the cylinder off real quick. This was at my old workplace in the office, in the toilet block, and I decided to drill a hole in the floor because I was upstairs and there was a shower down below, and the bathrooms that were being renovated downstairs. So I thought I'd just drop a hose down into the shower downstairs and be real easy. Picked the spot on the floor, drilled a hole, and managed to drill right into a copper line that was feeding it. It was the cold supply to the cylinder. So that was real unfortunate, and I flooded that bathroom. But yeah, just got to be real careful with the terminals on those elements, because it wouldn't take much to snap them off. And I'll never forget the water pouring out of there, and me running to my boss and saying, "Where's the water shut off?" And he had no idea, because we'd literally just moved into the building and we're doing sort of renovations on it. But anyway, this is me just taking that off where we drain contraption there, and putting the original plumbing back on. It was quite tight. Everything up here was a bit taut, if you like. But yeah, just getting that fitting back on there, tightening it up. These swivels rely on the face pushing in tight. They do have a little play in them, but you've got to put some pressure on them and get them seated correctly to tighten up. Otherwise you can have them weep around the outside. And then I'm just going to turn that back on. Just check everything's tight. Righto, let's head down and turn the water back on. So this house has a water tank just on the ground out here. So they do have a pressure pump to obviously pressurize their house water system. I didn't film that, but I just went back and flipped the circuit breaker that's feeding the pump. So that's me running back to the tap to turn that off. And then up back in the ceiling we go. Let's go the slightly easier way, even though that pipe's there in the way. It's still easier to just climb over that. Just Just making sure that's no weeping from that fitting, but it's good. Start putting it back together. Put the little cover on and get rid of my drain hose. Alright, I'm just going to grab the Fluke installation tester, and I just want to do insulation resistance on the new element. Just want to make sure I'm not installing an element that could prematurely fail because of bad manufacturing or whatnot. I know they do their own testing, but I just like to check these things, so just going to take the phase and neutral out of this connector. Clip that on there. Yep, clip the phase and neutral in there. Make sure that's nice and tight. And then just testing between the earth conductor and the two active conductors. That was on 250 volts. I'll just change it to the 500 volt scale and it's perfectly fine. And then I'll just quickly do a dead short, make sure my leads are in the correct positions so the tester's giving me a good reading, and that's cool. Just having another look at that ball valve because it's leaking. It's directly over the pan, so it's not dripping onto the ceiling or anything, but before I leave I do tell the customer that they should get a plumber to come and replace that ball valve. Putting these wires back together, back in the terminal. Cool, so now I'm just going to get my multimeter, clamp that onto the phase, make sure it's on amps, and stick it on there, and flick it on. There we go, 12.9 amps, which is what you'd expect for a 3 kilowatt element at 230 volts. And that's us done. Time for a quick pack up. Put the element cover back on. Boom, 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 and put the things in the car. Beautiful. If you like that video, please like and subscribe. And it was slightly more interesting than me looking at a multi-box in the last video, but hopefully I get some more interesting stuff coming up and I'll film that. So cheers.